All right, gang. It is Coach Chris here. I'm presenting the Master of the Marathon Race Week webinar for Team to End AIDS. This is going to be about the New York City Marathon, the largest marathon in the world, one of our most exciting events of the year and the end of our marathon training season. So I'm going to jump right in with a little hype video to get us excited.
It is race weekend.
Perhaps the biggest reopening yet, the New York City Marathon. The celebration starting tonight.
Let's go, let's go!
Oh man, it feels like the world's spinning the right direction again.
This is nothing like running anywhere else.
In about an hour, runners will step off for the Abbott Dash to the finish line.
This is New York. This says New York's back.
We are back. Let's go, New York.
Everyone's here to, watch the marathon and be a part of this weekend, so it was just an incredible atmosphere.
This is like I'm alive again.
I am ready. Sunday, here we come.
Drink it all in, people. It is glorious. One of the most spectacular scenes in sports is back, and the runners are ready to tackle the streets of New York.
There's nothing like racing in New York City.
New York Marathon is a community. It's love.
I run for my kids to show my boys that you can be strong and do what you set your mind to.
It's like the biggest bucket list check ever.
Biggest marathon, New York City Marathon.
I am so happy to be back at my 15th marathon.
I'm first time.
I've done it 30 times.
It's my first marathon. It's gonna be crazy. New York is back, and I feel like this is gonna be a good example of that.
We are moments away. We send it out to Staten Island.
Welcome to the 2021 TCS New York City Marathon. The streets of New York City await you. On your mark.
So they're on their way, 26.2 miles. It's going to be a sprint.
Ooh.
Yes.
I mean, I do have goosebumps. This might be one of the tightest races we've seen here in the last few years.
He is in the park. He is the silver bullet. Marcel Hu, yet another major victory coming from Australia. Madison De Rosario, as she has her second World Marathon major championship. You see the women's side, Chepchir, Cheptu, and Yashana. Those three, that is the race.
Chepchir making history right here if she can hold off.
What a terrific race, a gold medal win, and now a golden victory. Paris Chepchir is the champion of the 2021 New York City Marathon. Those three women raced a terrific battle back on the course because we still have to settle things in the men's race. Albert Carrier is up by 28 seconds. Albert Carrier, first to break the tape here. He is the 2021 TCS New York City Marathon champion.
It's just jumping. People are so happy to be out and about.
So the love and the energy is vibrant. We ready to take on the streets, and the people gonna show us love, and we love it. That's what it's all about.
It has been 735 days since the last edition of this race, and now the world's biggest marathon has returned.
Look at the runners just having so much fun out there. The weather is perfect.
Listen, I think once again, it's just the return of sport, right? It was the return of the marathon.
Just good to be around other people, man. Be back to the community.
This one is beyond any imagination I could have ever had.
Celebrating the 50th in styles. Everyone is coming together. Everyone is celebrating. Just a huge shout out and thanks to the unbelievable crowd and the fans out there. We love you. We love New York.
I think sometimes it's hard to know how much something means to you until it's gone, and then even until it comes back.
I even feel emotional now. It's just been a really hard 2 years for people. And it's been incredible to reunite with the running community.
Going through the boroughs and experiencing this. It's the greatest race on the planet, and I will always be a part of it.
Greatest race in the world, the greatest city in the world. Best day of my life. It was tough, but it was something else.
People finishing in tears. Just such an exciting day for New York to be back.
It was beautiful. Oh my God, it was the best marathon. Thank you. I love New York City.
You crushed it! You crushed it! Oh my God. I'm gonna cry.
I love New York.
All right. Well, if that doesn't get you a little choked up if you're a runner, I don't know what will. That's a recap video from a couple of years ago that came back from the pandemic. So it gave you a little preview of all the different parts of the race. But what we're going to cover today, I'm going to go over the course. I'm going to go over some tips specific to the marathon. We'll talk a little bit about things like the weather, how to spectate, and also our team-specific activities for Team to End AIDS around the marathon. Quick intro, though, for those of you who don't know me, Coach Chris. I've been the head coach for Team to End AIDS now for almost a decade, I think. I've done over 40 marathons, lots of triathlons, qualified for Team USA and a bunch of multi-sport events, and been the head coach or coach for a number of charity and nonprofit clubs over the years. And part of my professional career, I also run a metabolic testing lab. So some folks know I like to geek out on the numbers about marathons. And I live and work right along the Chicago Marathon, Chicago Triathlon course here in downtown Chicago. Coached a number of athletes over the years. And so you might hear me talk a little bit about, pacing and using heart rate and all that. So we'll talk about that towards the end. But what I want to do today is just jump right in. Also, I wanted to mention, we did already open registration for some of our events for next year. So if anyone wants to join T2, commit already to next year. We don't have New York Marathon or half open just yet, but we do have the Chicago Marathon open for next year, and we'll have the other events open up soon. So commit early. The lottery periods and whatnot do cause the guaranteed entries to get a little harder to come by after a while. So the fundraising minimums go up. The earlier you commit, the lower your fundraising minimum. So jump on that if you haven't already and join us next year. We'll probably be back at obviously the Chicago Triathlon and Marathon, but the New York City Marathon, we hope to be even a higher level charity next year with even more participants. And the New York City Half we just started recently has gotten really popular as well. So it's a great event in March next year that we hope to open registration for soon as well. Now let's talk about New York. The course, the 5 boroughs of New York. It is the world's largest marathon, or at least it was back in 2019 before the pandemic. It was a little bit smaller. It's been coming back. So this year, I don't know the exact numbers, but I would imagine it's right around what it was at 2019, give or take. So 50,000 or more. And it raises tons of money for charity. You see people fly in from all over the world. It really is a global celebration of running unlike any other that you can possibly find anywhere else. So if you're not familiar with the course, here's a quick video. I'm going to mute the audio here, but we start in Staten Island at the Marathon Village, going over the bridge. You actually have a 1 mile uphill, 1 mile downhill pretty much at the start without aid stations. You have to think about that. And then you run through Brooklyn. And after you spend a good amount of time in Brooklyn, you'll hit the halfway point as you head in towards Queens. There's a little bridge that you'll hit. The Pulaski Bridge will mark the halfway point of the whole race. Then you'll be in Queens briefly before you head over the Queensboro Bridge into Manhattan. When you get there, you're actually at less than single digits, 10 miles to go. Do a nice long run up First Avenue into the Bronx. Once you get through the Bronx, just a short little mile stretch, you're finishing the final 10K. As you run along Central Park, get a little false flat uphill, makes it a little challenging towards the end, some rolling hills. As you come all the way down the length of Central Park, wrap around Columbus Circle up to the finish line. So this is the same course it's been now, I think, for a couple of years, pretty much identical the last couple of years. So it's a very scenic tour of one of the largest cities in the world, and it has quite the epic start. You start crossing over this big bridge. You'll either be on the upper deck or the lower deck. It is quite an epic sight. You'll have different start areas. And while it might seem very intimidating just by the size of the race, just remind yourself, you've already made it. You've already done the training. That's really what the hardest part is. And race day is just a victory lap. You're just celebrating with 50,000 of your closest friends as you go for a victory lap around the Big Apple and go to pick up your finisher medal. So just remember to smile and soak it in. You've done the miles. Now it's just that final victory lap. So again, this is a nice view of the whole thing. Start in Staten Island, hit Brooklyn, Queens, hit the Bronx, and then end up in Manhattan for the finish line. The 5 boroughs of New York. And this is a big popular race. Many have seen it on TV. We've got some famous U.S. winners recently, including Shalane Flanagan, who you can see her about to drop the F-bomb as she celebrates going across the finish line here. And the New York Marathon, for those of you who aren't familiar, is part of what we call the World Marathon Majors. These 6 global giant marathons across the world. Chicago and New York are both part of that series. And if you've done multiple World Marathon Majors, you can go on the World Marathon Majors website. They actually have a global running club. They have a way for you to track your finishes, and they have different perks and rewards and things like that. You can get entries into the races and virtual challenges and all that. So just something to be aware of. This is what the start line looks like, though. I like this aerial view. The start village is down here on Staten Island, and you'll start in one of 3 different colored starting lines. So 3 separate start lines, 2 on the upper deck, 1 on the lower deck that cross the bridge. And then a couple of miles in is where you'll actually converge as one course. So it starts with 3 separate start lines. But it's an epic start. You see New York City off to your left shoulder, Statue of Liberty, the skyline, the fireboats spraying waters, helicopters flying around. It is quite the spectacle. But we want to talk about the course. So some insider things to know about if you've never done it before. The first 2 miles, you're going over the bridge, 1 mile straight uphill right at the start. So on the bridges, this is the same for some of the bridges later on, there are no aid stations. There's actually no aid stations until you hit basically mile 3. So that's something to think about in terms of hydration and fueling, and also pacing with the hill. There aren't any spectators. It's pretty quiet other than the helicopters and the fireboats launching water. So you want to think about what you're going to focus on. If you're looking at your heart rate, don't worry so much about pace. Especially if you're on the lower deck, your GPS watch might not get a perfect signal. And also think about bringing your own hydration and fuel. Just running with a water bottle, for example, for the first 2 miles might be a wise choice to make sure you're starting well hydrated and fueled. This year they changed the colors, but it's now blue, pink, or orange. So you'll have these different courses. And roughly at the 5K point, they somewhat merge together. They actually just run parallel to each other all the way through Brooklyn until about mile 8. And that's when the courses officially all merge together as one course. So you'll potentially be starting in one of those 3 different areas. Once you go through Brooklyn and Queens, you'll finally hit the Queensboro Bridge, the second big bridge, if you will. There's some other smaller ones as well. But this is another big bridge with a similar setup. There's no aid stations on here. There's no spectators. So you only have your own thoughts and the sound of feet running uphill and downhill to listen to. Other than I think there's a paramedic that usually opens up his car doors and plays some music at the top of the bridge. But you want to think about really when you hit these bridges, it's a little bit unique compared to the marathons, especially with the gaps between aid stations. So really focus on hydration, fueling. Think about the uphill and downhill. Don't push too hard. If you're using heart rate, go off that. Breathing rate, rate of perceived exertion. Just think about how you want to mentally approach both the uphill and downhills. The Queensboro Bridge is also unique at the end of it. It is a pretty steep downhill as you come off the bridge. So this is the bridge from the other side. You come across here, come down this pretty steep off ramp, and then you loop around and turn onto First Avenue. And you go from almost dead silence to loud throngs of spectators cheering, like 5 to 10 people deep. So this is what a lot of people talk about. So when you hit that last 10 miles and the crowd is roaring as you come down onto First Avenue. This is another view of that off ramp, just in case you're curious. Come down. I was a little surprised my first marathon at how steep this downhill was. And then you do a sharp little turn, U-turn here, go onto First Avenue and hang a left, and that's when you head straight up First Avenue. So just a little unique aspect. Obviously, the construction stuff won't be there on race day, but this is just a view so you can get an idea of what that looks like. This is what First Avenue looks like from a distance. It is just a long 3 or almost 4 miles straight. It is a little bit of a false flat. It kind of goes up and down just a little bit. So it can be challenging. If you are running, if you have friends and family coming, make sure you coordinate with them and know what side of the road they might be on, because it is very hard to find people because of the number of spectators. If I think roughly 2 million people spectating the course, maybe more. So it's kind of hard to spot someone amongst 2 million others. So plan that ahead of time if you can have friends or family spectating. And First Avenue is also a long stretch. It's also when you are approaching mile 20. So this is when people start to hit the wall. You know, if you look at it from a physiology standpoint, this is when most people will burn through most of the glycogen, the sugar in your muscles. So this is where bonking can begin to happen, and fueling becomes so important. You know, really focus on having a good fueling plan. A general good recommendation is, you know, if you haven't been practicing already or thinking about race day, taking a gel every 5K, you know, 100 calories of sugar in addition to the Gatorade and water you might pick up on course. That fueling every 5K strategy works really well to make sure that you can pace well for the finish. Once you go through the Bronx, you'll hit 2 little bridges, one going in, one coming out of the Bronx, and then you'll hit mile 21. So less than 10K to go at that point. And if you really want to think about the marathon, a good way to mentally prepare yourself for it is think of it as just a 10-mile long warm-up. Should feel easy the first 10 miles. It's good to go conservative. And then the second 10 miles is really when you want to make sure you're fueling and getting fueled up properly, because it's really just a race the final 10K. That is when the race really begins. So it's all about just fueling and warming yourself up for that final 10K. As we call it the 10-10-10 strategy. 10-mile warm-up, 10-mile fueling, 10K to finish. So think about your strategy. Make sure you're hydrating leading up to that very, very well. Make sure you're fueling every 5K, and that'll get you ready for the final stretch as you run along Central Park. You got some rolling hills before you finally hit this wonderful finish line. You know, the best thing I always say is have a mental plan, a little race plan in the back of your head. You know, what are you going to focus on? If it's your fueling, if you got a heart rate monitor, what number are you going to focus on? What effort level do you want to go on? If you don't have a heart rate monitor, think about your breathing rate. Do what we call our asymmetric breathing rate, where you think about how many steps you take as you breathe in, how many steps you take as you breathe out, and keep that nice and easy and controlled. But ultimately, it's just a day to celebrate. So you want to smile from start to finish, soak up all the spectators, all the cheering. Don't kick too early, especially with Central Park at the end. You got some rolling hills. Wait until you can actually see the finish line if you want to pick it up a little bit, and really soak that in. When you finish, New York's well known because it's in November, so it is a little chilly. You will get very cold after you finish, except last year was actually pretty warm, but in general, your body temperature will begin to drop. So best thing, they give you these ponchos you can wear, your celebration victory cape. As you trod through Central Park, you still have to walk another mile or more just to get out of Central Park after you finish. So then you want to think about how to get back to wherever you're going. And sometimes we don't plan that ahead of time. So make sure to give that some thought if you haven't looked at it already. The finish line in Central Park is kind of on the southwest corner, but you're going to have to walk for a good long stretch in Central Park. And then this highlighted purple area is actually like a security zone. You'll be walking through here several blocks of the city where spectators can't find you yet. So you have to think about what exit point you might want to take. They do have a runner reunite area that you can plan to meet friends and family at based on the letter. But if you want the shortest path out, we recommend 76th Street as the first opportunity to get out, especially if you don't have the bag drop. If you do the bag drop, that's a little further south here, down between 70th and 71st. You can exit around 69th Street, would be a good spot to meet friends and family. A few years ago, we had people meet on a regular basis coming out at 76th Street and going to the first available restaurant they could find to get some food and drinks and to put their feet up. So Playa Betty's is one place. I think it might still be a good option. 320 Amsterdam is the address. So if you want to meet at a restaurant rather than meeting in the middle of a crowd, that could be something to think about as well. So just have a plan if you're meeting friends or family, or if you're going back to your hotel, think about how you're getting there. If you're going to hop on the subway, they have the subway lines right near there, the 1, 2, and 3, or down around Columbus Circle. There's a bunch as well. So just make sure you've at least given that some thought, so it's not a last minute thing in terms of planning. But overall, start to finish, this is what the marathon looks like. And these are some good tips. So again, the first couple miles, the courses will be separated and you won't have hydration. So the most important thing to know is they will have aid stations roughly every mile, but there's no aid until mile 3, and there's no aid at a couple of the other mileage points. So 5, 7, 9. So there's no aid stations at 1, 2, 5, 7, 9. So I highlighted these here in red. You can see what it looks like with the elevation profile. So with that in mind, really think about, if there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 aid stations in the first 10 miles that aren't there, you're really only getting 5 aid stations in the first 10 miles, right? So that is unfortunate. Ideally, I always like to see an aid station every mile or mile and a half. But if there's these kind of longer gaps, make sure you think about that. Make sure you're hydrating maybe a little bit extra. Maybe you're grabbing 2 cups of Gatorade instead of 1 in those first couple aid stations. And then later on, at mile 12 and 18, they will actually have additional gels. The sponsor that just started last year and runs through next year is Science and Sport. So they will have specific isotonic gels. So they're more liquidy. They're easier to take down without water. They'll have orange, lemon, lime, tutti frutti, and tropical as the isotonic flavors. And then they have one with caffeine, the berry flavor. You'll notice that at the top of the label there. So if you're sensitive to caffeine, just look at the very top of that label. They do advertise it as low sugar. It's still got carbs. Obviously, they use maltodextrin, which is a popular source of carbs for energy gels. So pretty standard energy gel, even if you haven't tried it. It's gentler on the stomach than some others. So it's usually a pretty good option. So think about if you're going to pick any of those up. If not, think about what are you going to bring, the best fueling strategy, whether you're doing chews or gummies or gels or bringing your own bottle or whatever you're doing, at least get in roughly 100 calories, like 1 gel every 5K. That should kind of be your base in addition to the Gatorade that you're taking in if you want to make sure that you're fueling well enough to finish strong. They will also have bananas at mile 21 and 23. So towards the end, if you're really cramping up, want to get a little potassium in, that's always a good option. The course does have a cutoff time. It's 7 hours after the final wave starts, about a 16-minute mile pace. But they actually keep the finish line scoring in place until 8 p.m. They'll just make people move to the sidewalks. But they will have sweet buses that will take people to the finish based on that 7-hour marathon cutoff time. So this is kind of all the important information of the race in one slide. You can find this info on the website as well. Just go to the course page and they've got all these details for you. Let's talk a little bit about what we're doing for our team, T2. We usually do a nice little brunch at the Skylight Diner. So look for your newsletter from Jonathan and Christina to have those details. But here's a little checklist of things to do for race week. So 1, read the emails, read the emails, read the emails. At the expo, they might also have what they call a pocket guide that you can pick up, a physical little guide of the marathon. But they also have an events calendar on the website. So if you want to look at some of the additional little events that take place around the marathon, there's what they call a parade of nations or an opening ceremony that they host. A lot of shakeout runs. They also have a 5K race the day before, which is actually it's typically the national championship for USA Track and Field, one of the largest 5Ks in the country, actually, the day before. People don't even realize it because they kind of lose sight of it with the marathon happening the next day, but a very big event that shuts down a lot of the streets in New York. So it is a little harder to get around on Saturday morning. Be aware of that. So definitely download the phone app if you haven't already. That's got all the details of pretty much everything you need. I don't know this social. This is what we had last year. I need to double check with Christina if we're doing any social on Friday. This is kind of an unofficial thing. A little show tunes bar, if you wanted to go to that. That's a fun option that people go to sometimes as a team. There's often a shakeout run as well. Fleet Feet has a store in New York City near Columbus Square. I think it's actually Saturday at 7:30 a.m. And then we also do a T2 brunch on Saturday morning. We recommend everybody come to that. It'll be near are not far from the expo. So if you didn't pick up your packet on Friday, you can go after the brunch on Saturday. But budget extra time for everything. Getting around the world's busiest city, if you will, takes time. And also with streets closed on Saturday, it takes even more time. So really plan your day out in terms of logistics of getting to the expo. Try to go early if you can. Plan extra time for everything in terms of walking around, because you don't want to be on your feet too much, right? So try to minimize the amount of time you're moving around just by planning a little bit ahead of time. The other thing that we do, we partner with Team Fox on race weekend. So in Chicago, we invite them to our little headquarters. In New York, they invite us to theirs. So they have a new location. It's still Stout NYC, but it's not the same location as last year. It's the Penn Station location this year. And so after the marathon wraps up, oftentimes people will go back to their hotels or whatnot, shower, change, and then come back out for a little after party. So post-race party is going to be from 6:30 to 9:30 at the Penn Station location of Stout NYC. The address is 133 West 33rd Street. So those are some team-specific things that we have going on. One other thing that I put together, this is kind of my data geek side of what I like to do. I have a big giant spreadsheet where I track all of our athletes. You're welcome to update your info in here. We try to put your bib numbers, your wave and corral info. We don't have it for everybody. So if you can go in and update your information, that is always appreciated, especially if you might have a goal time in mind. Otherwise, we just kind of estimate it based on your corral. But this spreadsheet, what it does is it calculates when you start based on your actual corral and wave. So it estimates the exact time you'll start, you'll cross the start line. And then from that, it can obviously just estimate roughly what your finish time might be based on people in that same corral, but you can update that. So if you have a specific goal time you're shooting for. And then on the right-hand side, it actually calculates what time of day you'll be hitting different parts of the course. So if you have friends or family spectating, we highlighted a couple areas in red where we will have some spectators. And then it even shades it in gray to let you know when sunset is. So if your time is going to be after sunset, which is a unique aspect to the New York Marathon, because the start times are very late for the New York Marathon. You're generally starting, was it 9:30 or later up until noon or even afternoon in some cases. Your finish time might be after sunset. So oftentimes as you're running into Manhattan with 10 miles to go, it's already starting to get a little dark. The sun's beginning to go down. And so you're actually finishing in the dark. And so that's something to be aware of. This year, I also calculated what time you'll be coming out of Central Park after you finish, calculating a little bit of a walking time. So your friends and family can know when to roughly expect to find you as well. So it's a handy little spreadsheet. You don't have to use it, but something fun that we do as well. All right, a couple other things. So race week. So race week is a busy week. We do still want you to run. We still want you to stay active. Think about muscle activation. You don't need to hit any specific intensity or pace or distance. Just keep your body moving. Keep your running routine going. Just cut the volume down to about half of what you normally would do, if not more. And think about muscle maintenance. If anything's feeling sore, if you want to get a massage, if you want to do some mobility or flexibility work, that's really all you need to worry about on race week. Extra miles at that point won't really matter one way or the other. But little things you can do can make your race day experience a little better, like clipping your toenails. Don't forget to do that. If you want to avoid getting some black toenails from your toes rubbing against your shoes, clipping back those toenails a little bit can be helpful. If you're traveling, make sure you hydrate really well. Bring a bottle with you if you're traveling on an airplane. Think about carbo loading a little bit more, a little extra carbs in every meal. Doesn't need to be a lot, just a little bit. And then also, if you're going to plan, if you don't already have dinner plans, if you need to make reservations or at least find some options, make sure you start planning that out if you haven't already. And double check all your gear. Pack up everything just as you would for race morning, and do it this weekend, a full weekend before. Have all your gear laid out, everything dialed in, so you're not stressing about anything last minute. Make sure you have all the nutrition you need, et cetera, et cetera. So make sure. And also even think about morning and after the race too, like what gear, what layers do you want and things like that. On race week, though, on Friday, if you can get to the expo on Friday, go to the expo early, get your gear ready, make sure it's laid out if it's not packed already. Think about eating healthy, eating smart, snacking and hydrating all day, and try to get a little more sleep. Try to get to bed a little bit earlier, even though it's a late race start. It's still an early morning because of the logistics of the ferry and getting to the start. So get something to make sure you plan. Saturday, the day before the race, we'll have that brunch at the Skylight Diner. We recommend that you set your alarms, maybe multiple alarms, or do a buddy system with somebody. Maybe send a final support crew thank you email to your support crews, coaches, friends, staff, people who've donated to your fundraising. Send them the tracking app, send them some spectating info, like watch live on TV. And then also pack any of your snacks. What are you going to have for breakfast? What are you going to have before the race start? What are you going to have during the race for fuel? And then maybe a snack for afterwards as well. A little protein recovery shake or whatnot in your hotel room is always a good idea. The expo is also pretty massive. It's at one of the world's largest convention centers at the Javits Convention Center. So expect that to take a little bit of time. Budget your time for getting there. There's a lot of public transportation options. There's a lot of fun things to do nearby as well. But you do need to pick up your own packet. You need to bring your photo ID. You don't need a vaccination card anymore. But they do ask you to pick your slot, a time slot to pick up your materials. So if you haven't done that, log into your New York Roadrunners dashboard, the website, and make sure you've picked that if you haven't already. I think also the deadline for the bag pre-check might have already passed, but that is where you find that as well. So they have an option for you to drop off a gear bag in Central Park before the race if you want something there for after the race. The problem with dropping off the bags the day before is, one, you're on your feet more. You have to do the logistics of dropping off your bag. And two, you'll have a slightly longer walk route as well after you finish. If you don't have a bag, you can get out just slightly earlier as well. So just something to think about. They will not have any gear check at the start village. That's the most important thing to know. So you can bring layers that you can toss and things like that, but they will not have a bag check at the start on race day. They don't transport anything to the finish. They did a long time ago, but not anymore. So just be aware of that. But everyone, regardless, they used to give you an option of picking either getting a bag check or getting a poncho. Now everybody gets the poncho either way, so you don't have to worry about that. But logistics, make sure you know where you're going in the city, know where the Javits Center is. It's in kind of close to the Hudson Yards area. It's Javits Convention Center. There's the elevated little green walkway, the vessel, all these different like new developments. There's a new high-rise building where you can go on the ledge and outdoor terrace. There's a lot of fun stuff you can do nearby if you want to be a little bit of a tourist without having to go too far around the city. Something you can maybe plan to do if you want, or save that for after the race if you don't want to be on your feet. This is what the Javits Center looks like. Some people just call it Javits for short. It's also not too far from Penn Station. So know that's kind of a way to get around, know where Times Square is relative to that. A lot of people stay at hotels near Times Square. But also know that there are other events going on throughout the weekend. There's a 5K race on Saturday. There's different events at shakeout runs happening. New York Roadrunners has a running center, which is not the same as where the packet pickup is. It's up near the finish line. Fleet Feet has a location near that Columbus Circle. It's kind of the final turn finish line area. So just know your way around the city. Spend some time to look at that. If you want to look up some fun events to do, look up Fleet Feet New York, look up New York Roadrunners Run Center. They usually have a whole list of different events going on. Obviously, make sure you look through all the details of the race. If you're doing the bag check, I think I mentioned that, so I'm going to skip over this part. But they do have a specific section on the website about the bag check if you did select that. If not, I think that deadline has already passed, so you don't have to worry about that. Just bring anything disposable. All right, so the race start. This is why the race is a little complicated. The world's largest marathon is a logistical challenge to get everybody to the same start line. So that's why they actually have 3 separate start lines that converge together, a rather unique aspect, and they have 5 wave start times. So 9:10 a.m. is the first wave. The elites will actually finish before the last wave even starts. So you want to think about how to get there. They do have a ferry system. They have the option, you pick that through the website. They have all the details posted there. But just plan out your morning. Think about what time am I actually starting and what snacks or drinks or whatnot will I want beforehand. So set your alarms accordingly so you can get to the ferry on time. Think of breakfast, snacks. Think about layers. Some people bring like a cushion or a spare shirt or something to sit on if you're going to be sitting around for a while. But there's a lot of fun things to do in and around the start, and you will get in your corral relatively early. Based on the color that you're in, blue corral, now it's the pink corral, or the orange corral. They have different areas, but you can merge in and kind of see each other. So if you have friends in one area, you can kind of meet together. There's all different areas. There's therapy dogs, usually in one corner, so you can pet some puppies. They have TV stations doing interviews. Dunkin' Donuts gives out these hats typically. So get those early, and keep you warm, or it could be something to sit on. Sometimes people bring like a magazine or something just to sit on to find a spot on the curb. Think about wind protection layer if it looks like it's a windy day or cold day. You know, if you have an old sweatshirt, poncho is great to wear just to keep warm and to block the wind. So just take a look at that if you haven't already. Get familiar with the Start Village. If you're not doing the bus or the ferry, they do have a rideshare drop-off location. So make sure you familiarize yourself with the map and know kind of where you'll be entering, where to go. They do have a security check-in. So whether you're taking the bus or the ferry or whatnot, you will go through security. They won't let you bring a hydration like a Camelback backpack, but you can bring a vest of different options. They list that out on the website pretty specifically. But you will have to get into your corral, like into a staging area, about half an hour before your wave start time. So think about that as you calculate back from when your wave is. That will guide you on when to get into your corral. It's very organized, but you need to definitely make sure you're paying attention to when you need to start. Similarly, at the finish, think about the fact that there is a big, what they call a security zone. So friends and family can't get into the finish line. Know where you're going to go after you finish, just like you should know where you need to go for the start. If you're doing the bag drop off or whatnot, get familiar with that. And then obviously for later in the evening, you'll typically have time to, go back to a hotel or whatnot to change. But at 6:30 p.m. to 9:30, we'll have our team celebration at the Stout NYC at Penn Station. So that's the new location. Weather forecast, actually didn't go through the specific forecast because that can obviously change. It's looking pretty good. Generally, the weather can be anything from 36 to 66. I think it was warmer than that last year. Typically, though, it's perfect running weather. Usually 48 degrees is perfect running weather. So just be familiar with that. If it's going to be a windy day, if there's going to be rain, do you want to bring a poncho? I would bring one irregardless, just as a way to stay warm and to block yourself from the wind, something that you can easily toss. So look at the morning forecast and look at the early temperature and the late temperature. When you finish, it might be very, very cold. So factor that in. We'll oftentimes look at the humidity or the dew point or the feels like temperature, especially if it's going to be wet. Luckily they give you those ponchos, but sometimes I'll even bring things like extra gloves. Even just a pair of like latex gloves could be a good way to keep your hands protected from the elements, to keep your hands warm. So that's something to think about if you want to keep your body warm. Just think of those. I do have a big, crazy long checklist and a couple YouTube videos I shot of all my little morning stuff, and I put it all in a Ziploc bag to keep it dry. I've got my sunscreen, I've got little snacks and everything. So if you want to watch that, you can take a look at my little videos I've done to guide you through that. I also have a big, exhaustive checklist of different things that you might want to consider bringing. You don't have to bring all of this, but I'll direct you just to this website where I've got a lot of this listed out. Some things, though, I will mention for first timers. If you get chafing, from rubbing and sweat and getting wet and all that, you can have issues with chafing. Men and women alike, sometimes the nipples can get a little bit chafed, and you'll see bloody nipples on some people's t-shirts. You don't want to be that person, so think about nipple protection. If you want to put a little Vaseline, and actually make nipple band-aids now that you can wear. I oftentimes run with actually blister band-aids in a race belt in a waterproof Ziploc baggie. So if I get blisters, I'll sometimes even stop and put blister band-aids on, or I'll just have these for after the race, because usually I'll have a blister somewhere. If you're looking for a good blister band-aid, the Band-Aid brand, the Johnson & Johnson products with the silver label on the top, what they call their HydroSeal or hydrocolloid bandages, are really, really good for blisters. Also, for any chafing body spots, the baby ointment, A and D cream, vitamin A and vitamin D, that's a preventative, kind of like a Vaseline-like product that can be really, really good if you get chafing marks anywhere else on your body. So think about that. If you're traveling, don't forget your chargers. If you have a Garmin watch, bring your Garmin charger. Think about your breakfast or snacks. Think about any disposable layers you're going to bring, if you're going to bring gloves or not. Running gloves might be a good idea. Usually in New York, I'll have running gloves. Sunscreen, even though it's not necessarily a hot or super sunny day, it's a shorter day, typically with the early sunset, but still something to think about. Extra socks, any compression gear, recovery tools, extra battery pack, things like that. So this big long checklist you can go check out on your own if you like. Just some ideas for race day. All right, so let's talk about pacing real quick. For the marathon, obviously you're starting, this is the bridge, you're going up and down. Your first 2 miles are very long. It's a very, very long bridge. And so learning how to pace that is a good skill, or at least something to think about planning. Sometimes if you're on the lower deck, your GPS watch might not work perfectly, and you're going uphill. So it might be hard to predict what pace you're actually going to try to shoot for. So instead of focusing on pace, have a backup plan, whether you're going to focus on heart rate, which is always generally actually a better way to pace. Think about starting the race slow, doing what we call a negative split. If you know your heart rate zones, generally, depending on if you have your heart rate zones dialed in, we'll say pace about 70 to 80% of your max heart rate for the first half. That puts you in what we call the green zone, zone 3, and then only creep into the yellow zone or zone 4, or the orange zone, the lower half of that, 80 to 85% of your max heart rate for the second half of the marathon. And if you just use that as a pacing strategy, you can do the math. It's a really effective way of running a marathon to ensure that you can keep your pace going from start to finish. I do that with all of my metabolic testing clients. It's a very, very effective way to pace regardless of hills and weather conditions. If you don't have a heart rate monitor, though, focus on breathing. I just did a marathon this weekend, actually, and this is what I did. Instead of looking at heart rate, I just focused on how many steps I take as I complete all of my exhaling, and then how many steps I take as I inhale. And if my breathing rate is a 4-3, a really kind of long 4 steps breathing out, 3 steps breathing in rate, that lets me ensure that I'm running at a nice controlled effort. That's where you're more metabolically efficient, and you're actually oxidizing body fat for free fuel, so to speak, extra energy, by running at a lower intensity is a really effective way to do your marathon pacing. But other than that, just smile. Smiling helps you feel better, helps you ease up on the pace a little bit as well. Follow the tangent line. They'll actually paint on the ground kind of that shortest path. So run the shortest path possible. Don't zigzag. Know where the turns are that are coming up. If it's a hot day, maybe run in the shade. If it's a cold day, maybe run in the sun. But just smile. Get some good race photos out of it. Even if you're having a tough day, force that smile, and that'll make you feel better from start to finish. But for the geeks out there, I have big crazy spreadsheets. So if you want any of these, this is a new one I just made this year called my negative split worksheet. You can actually put in your your weight, if you know your heart rate, your threshold heart rate, and your threshold pace from doing like a 5K run and different assessments, it'll actually calculate and write out a whole fueling guideline and pacing strategy for what to look for in terms of heart rate. So we did this for the Chicago Marathon, but you can use this for the New York Marathon as well. So this is the QR code to that. I'm also happy for all of our New York Marathon runners. If you want to schedule time to do a Zoom chat, I will walk you through all this. So if you want to geek out on the numbers and get a really dialed in race plan, just shoot me a note. We also have a new tool we just started using, and we actually just launched a new, they're doing a preseason project, they call it, where you get a 2-month trial. RunDot. This is a tool that Meb Keflezighi is now coaching through as well. We have a really cool aspect of this called Race Execution, where you can put in your fitness numbers from runs you've done and the New York Marathon course, and it'll predict and give you a pacing plan for the whole marathon from start to finish. And so it'll estimate exactly what your finish time might be based on the terrain, the hills, the bridges, and all that as well. So that'll factor in weather, humidity, course, all the details using a lot of AI and some data mining that they've done. So really cool tool. Happy to walk folks through that as well if you want to give that a whirl. So let's talk finally about fueling. If you haven't already sat down and really thought about your fueling plan, make sure you do that. I usually recommend a couple little tips. One is what I call a 3-2-1 taper. So if you're thinking about what should I snack, what should I eat before the race, I like to do 300 calories 3 hours before the race, 200 calories 2 hours before the race, and 100 calories 1 hour before the race. So usually that would be like a shake at 3 hours, a bar or a banana and a bagel at 2 hours, and then the final hour before the race starts, maybe finish off a bottle of Gatorade or take a gel in. And then during the race, the easiest strategy I recommend is just take in one gel or similar product, chews, gummies, whatever it might be, every 5K. So every 5K or roughly every 30 minutes if you want to go off time. If you want to adjust it for your body weight, I also use 100 calories for every 100 pounds per hour as a guideline. So there's a lot of ways to calculate things, but just think about what you're going to take with you. And if you're going to pick anything up on course. The New York Marathon doesn't have the Gatorade products. This is from the Chicago Marathon, but they will have the Science in Sport gels that you can pick up on course. And then when you finish, if you're feeling really bad after you finish, you're pretty depleted. Most important thing, especially because it's cold at New York, typically at the finish, is get your body temperature back up. Warm yourself back up. That will help your body get your appetite back quicker, and keep fueling, keep hydrating until you go to the bathroom. Once you hydrate, then you'll start to get that appetite back. So this is usually my post-race fueling strategy. If I can, I'll take a banana in, but if not, I'll just focus on liquids. I'll have a full water bottle, full Gatorade, a protein drink. Then maybe if I want an adult beverage, I'll have that, and then another bottle of water, another protein shake, and I'll just kind of keep pushing the fluids until I've gone to the bathroom. And that's a sign that you've recovered properly after your marathon. So anyhow, the fueling strategy, generally speaking, if you want to do it based on grams, for any event over 3 hours, most of us for the marathon would want to shoot for about 90 grams of carbs. So different sources combined, like one bottle of Gatorade, one gel, maybe one thing of gummies every hour or so would actually get you towards that number. So think about all that. Think about your fueling. Think about your hydrating. Know that you can't have the Camelback backpacks with the bladders. You can have the running vests with the bottles you can put on the front. They list out very specifically on the website. So if you have questions about that, check out the website. But don't do anything new. You do what you've done in training. Spend this final weekend to dial in your final gear, your nutrition plan. Make sure you're not just drinking water. Make sure you're getting some Gatorade in. I would almost drink exclusively Gatorade in the marathon. Or when I have water, maybe take some salt in. If you only did water, you're diluting your blood sodium. That's what can lead towards what we call hyponatremia instead of hypernatremia or dehydration. So just take in Gatorade. Even if you get a little bit sick of it, just keep taking in some type of salt, some type of sugar, You just want things as balanced as possible. Looking at the course map can be a great way to plan out, okay, what are you going to take at each aid station? Sometimes I like to just alternate. I'll have water and a gel at one aid station, and then the next aid station, take Gatorade, and just keep alternating that. So I'll even take gels as often as every 2 miles in that case. But plan ahead, know where the gaps are in the aid stations, think about just getting a little bit of something as often as possible. You don't need to take in a lot. You don't need to change anything up. Just stick to your plan. Keep hydrating. If after the marathon or even during, if you have to go to the bathroom, look at your urine. You don't want it to get really dark. You want it relatively clear, and realize that you store hydration in your body with sugar. So every gram of glycogen or sugar that you stores about 3 to 4 grams of water in your body. So to rehydrate or to stay hydrated, don't just drink water in the days before the marathon. Take some sugar in with that water. And if you're taking any medications, obviously that can affect your hydration as well. So a little bit of sugar, a little bit of salt with any of the fluids you take in. And usually a good rule of thumb or mantra to have in the back of your head, if you're feeling great, keep drinking. Keep fueling, keep drinking. If you're ever feeling cranky during the marathon, it's probably a sign your blood sugar and muscle glycogen is low. So eat, get some sugar in. That is the secret to doing well in marathon racing, is to get a little bit of sugar in constantly. Spectators, we did have a new app we used at our Chicago marathon. You're welcome to use this for the New York Marathon as well. It's a team reach app. You can put in group code T2 crew. So spectators want to use that. If you're bouncing around the city, want to coordinate with friends and other T2 spectators, that's a great little app to use. You don't have to share your cell phone number. You can just find people on that app. So if you have friends or family who are going to spectate, let them know that we do have some cheering stations. Team Fox that we partner with, they actually have 3 cheer stations. We'll usually be at 2 of them, mile 7.2 in Brooklyn and then mile 23.5 along Central Park. So if they want to get a plan, tell them to download the app. If they want to use that spreadsheet that we have, they can use that and cheer on some of our fellow teammates as well to know what their bib numbers are and how to track them. It'll all be in that spreadsheet. And then these cheer stations will be there at certain times of day, so you can give them an idea of when and where we'll be. And then also the after party at Stout NYC, they're welcome to come to that as well. It's managed by Team Fox, but our T2 athletes are invited to it as well. So feel free to take advantage of that. This is a sample spectator plan. I think I was spectating last year, was it? Went out and took some photos of you guys out there. This was kind of my rough plan of the day. So if you want to give your spectators a plan, they might want to get up early, get some breakfast to fuel up. Maybe they want to watch the wheelchair start. If they want to meet early, we went to right in Brooklyn, like a bagel shop, get some good New York bagels for breakfast, and then think about when the wheelchair athletes might start coming through. Then you can see the elite athletes come through. If you need to take a subway, you want to budget that amount of time. And then think about when they might want to meet at our cheering station based on when you might come through. So we stayed there from 10 to 1. Then we went on the subway to Central Park and spectated there from like 2 to 5, met up with people afterwards for a quick snack, and then went to the after party. So this is a rough outline. Again, just something to think about. Helps your spectators plan out their day. So coordinate that. There's also a spectator guide on the website. So download the app, read the spectator guide, and if they want, they can print out that little calculation spreadsheet that'll let them know what time of day to roughly expect you. But the app does a pretty good job of on the fly calculating some of that. One thing I will say though, because New York Marathon is so big and there's so many spectators, try to get any spectators you have to make a nice, really bright colored sign. Something that stands out in a crowd is a much easier way to be able to be seen and to interact. So tell them if they want to plan that ahead of time. I also like to, when I go and spectate, bring a little bag of extra supplies. So if hey, I might need something, some Vaseline, some sunscreen, extra gel, maybe a poncho, tell your friends or family members if there's anything that you need that they can actually maybe have a couple of things just in case you need something as well. So after the race, I think I talked about The reason they actually make you walk 2 miles is because if you stop right away, your blood pressure will drop, your body temperature will drop. So keep moving when you finish, keep rehydrating, like I mentioned, get water in, get electrolytes in, get some protein and carbs in. Make sure you keep hydrating until you go to the bathroom. Stay warm, get the space blanket, the Mylar blanket on, keep sipping, get a shower and get some dry clothes back on, take care of any blisters. If you need to, grab some of those Band-Aids, grab some A&D cream. That will be something you will be very thankful for when you hop in the shower after the race, and scream if any salt gets on any chafing marks. So try to avoid that if you can. I think that's it. So I wanted to just say good luck, everybody. Don't worry if you're nervous about the race. That is a good sign. That means you're thinking about it. That means you're getting ready mentally. Everybody is nervous, even us veterans who've done dozens of marathons. You are ready. You've done the training. You've logged hundreds of miles already. A little 26.2 shakeout is just your victory lap for race day. But if you do have any questions, you can always email us. You also have the Facebook groups you can contact us at. If you were here in Chicago for our photo shoots, you can, if you want any of the photos to post some final fundraising updates, do that. If you want to make any final donations, if you already hit your fundraising goal, our coaches also continue to do fundraising throughout the year. Thank your coaches, thank your supporters, thank Christina and Jonathan. They'll be out there cheering you guys on race weekend in New York. And just remember, it's nothing more than just a big victory lap. So smile from start to finish. All right, that is pretty much it. I'm going to open it up to questions here if anyone has any questions. And then if not, like I said, use the Facebook groups. And if anyone needs to go through any final race planning, don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll be tracking you guys on race day. So good luck. We'll see you out there.